screens, and I want you to think, what is the smallest country in the world? What is the smallest country in the world? Is it A, Liechtenstein, B, Tuvalu, C, Monaco, or D, none of the above? I see one hand out there. Jim? None of the above? Okay, hold on there. Keep your answer in your head. See if you're right. You're right if you answer D, none of the above. 1/3 of the world's smallest country is a garden. There are a few more hints. About 900 citizens call it home, but 1,300 people actually work there, many of whom are non-residents. It has its own currency, its own postal service. It has an army numbering 100 men, and it even has one adult bookstore. The only reason that the world's smallest country exists is due to a 2,000-year-old grave site. Okay, Jim, what is it? The Vatican. You are right, the Vatican. You have just won a new Ford Fiesta, which I think is the most pitiful prize that if you watch Wheel of Fortune, essentially can be offered. It's like, for years, it's been a Ford Fiesta. Crazy, I don't understand. The world's smallest nation is indeed the Vatican. And according to tradition, in about 64 AD, when Rome burned, the Apostle Peter had come to Rome to spread the message of Christ's love and was martyred and killed by the Emperor Nero. Peter was buried in a cemetery nearby to the Circus of Nero, and for 250 years his grave was secretly and quietly revered. The Apostle Peter, we might call him Jesus' right-hand man, and he has come to be recognized as the first pope or bishop of Rome, from whom all later popes have claimed their authority as head of the church. By the way, Peter would have despised this title, Peter being Jewish in every regard, but also believing in Jesus as the Jewish Messiah and bringer of a new age. Peter would have little in common with the church that would exist 300 years later on the site of his burial, St. Peter's, which was built by Constantine, the first Christian emperor in 313 AD. Peter, yes, would have little in common with this church that is the most grandest expression of a religion that bears the name of Christ. I do love this church. This is a magnificent church. That is the Balducci's altarpiece that was built in the 16th century in the newest of churches, standing over the burial site of Peter, that being the altar, the main altar, and below it being Peter's grave, according to tradition and excavations. When Christianity was legalized by Constantine in 313, a church was built over the site of Peter's grave, and it lasted for 1,200 years, from 329 AD to 1500. But by the time of the Renaissance in the Middle Ages in the 15 and 1600s, Old St. Peter's was falling apart, and it was considered unfit to be the church of the Western Church of Christianity. And so a newer, larger church that we see today, probably on the next screen, the church that we see today was begun in 1506 by the architect Donato Bramante. And Bramante was succeeded by Michelangelo, who was the architect and builder of the dome, but who died before the dome was built. What's interesting is that in the Catholic Church, which has not given voice to the those of same-sex gender lifestyle for all of these years, its architect of its most famous church was indeed a homosexual. St. Peter's was known as a self-contained world in itself. It was more than a church. Nothing has been attempted like it ever before. Jesus died knowing his land was occupied by legions of Roman soldiers who silenced numerous Jewish uprisings and revolts. In Galilee, in the land around the sea, the land where Jesus would do his ministry. That was the world of Jesus, a world of revolution, a world of revolt, a world of trying to rid Galilee of Roman occupation and oppression, much like the countries of today's world try and rid themselves of foreign occupations. Europe, on the other hand, claimed that Jesus' most prominent follower, Peter, from whose grave birthed the Catholic Church and its later branch, Protestantism. Peter, the Prince of the Apostles, no fewer than 6 names. I said 7. 6 names are used for him in the New Testament. Simon, Simon Peter, Simeon, Simeon Peter, Peter, and Cephas. What would Jesus have called him? Jesus, who spoke Aramaic and was Jewish, would call him Simeon. Those who spoke Greek, both Jews and Gentiles, would call him Simon. Jesus will give this Simon a nickname. He says, Simon, and I tell you, you are Petros, or Peter, and upon this Petra, or rock, I will build my church. And so among Aramaic-speaking Jews, Simon, Simeon, would now become called Cephas. And Greek-speaking Jewish and Gentile followers would call him Petros. It was a feminine version of a name. And so we know it didn't refer to a first name. It was somewhat like Jesus is calling this man Rocky. We all have images of Rocky in our minds from the movie with Sylvester Stallone. Rocky. Indeed, the life of Peter was Rocky. Peter gets good press in the Gospels. Very good press. He's in it a lot. In the 4 Gospels and the first 12 chapters of the book of Acts that tell about the work of the apostles, 60% of those passages are about Simon Peter in some way. But all of the press isn't good. During Jesus' trial, Peter gets singled out by every gospel writer as having one who denied Jesus, knowing Jesus. Paul, whom Peter had his confrontations with, but also worked along side by side to spread the proclamation of the gospel to foreign lands, Paul actually calls Peter a hypocrite in the letter to the Galatians. While Jesus addresses Peter more frequently than any other apostle, Peter is also condemned by Jesus more than any other apostle. Peter is the only apostle in Scripture that is bold enough to go up to Jesus' face and rebuke him. Sometimes the gospel portrait of an apostle is not all the time good. Sometimes, or oftentimes, the apostles are the ones who don't get it. But on the other hand, the gospel traditions stress Peter's prominence. So I think it's a good lesson for you and I, because I think you and I are much more like the apostles than we realize. Like several of Jesus' 12 apostles, Simon Peter was a fisherman. He was the brother of Andrew, who we'll look at next week. And the brothers come from the village of Bethsaida. Again, Bethsaida is the archaeological site excavated by the University of Nebraska, Omaha, and others, which is north of the Sea of Galilee. Now, it was on the Sea of Galilee at one time. Peter is one of two disciples in the Gospels that are married, probably more, but we just hear about the wives of two of the apostles. The Gospel of Mark tells us that Jesus will go to Capernaum and heal Peter's mother-in-law, and Capernaum sort of becomes the home base of the movement, the early movement of disciples, apostles of Jesus. And those going on the trip in October will be able to walk into that synagogue and to view that early church that tradition holds is the home base for this earliest movement of Jesus. Josephus, the Jewish historian, served for a time as the governor of Galilee, where Capernaum and Bethsaida are located. And Josephus knows Galileans well. Josephus describes Galileans as being quick in temper and given to quarreling. And he says they are ever fond of innovations, and by nature disposed to changes, and delight in sedition. Galileans are ready to follow a leader and to begin an insurrection. Pretty much what we have of the disciples and Jesus in this decade of the 30s, early or late 20s and early 30s. One of the best ways that we can catch the flavor and personality of the Apostle Peter is to become familiar with the Gospel of Mark. Why, you say? Well, many scholars through the centuries have agreed that Mark was Peter's interpreter, maybe not the Mark that wrote the Gospel, but at least the Mark that the Gospel would have been centered around the community of Mark. And that if we read the Gospel of Mark, then we understand Peter, his personality, and his preaching. Peter has an early encounter with the risen Christ. And the Gospel of John tells us it was on the early in the morning on the third day that Peter and John go to the tomb of Jesus. And on the way they meet Mary Magdalene, who tells them that the tomb is empty. And so Peter and John begin to run to the tomb. John is younger and faster and arrives at the tomb quicker than Peter, but Peter, when he arrives, John stands outside. He won't go in the tomb, but when Peter arrives, he goes into the tomb, which shows us that Peter wasn't actual to kind of be direct and to confront the situation head on. After the death of Jesus, Peter emerges as the movement's major spokesperson. Although James, the brother of Jesus, becomes the administrative leader of the early church in Jerusalem. Peter will serve as the mediator between Jesus' brother James and the Apostle Paul. The book of Acts tells us that after Jesus' death and ascension, it is Peter who stands up among the believers and announces what they must do. And what they must do is restore the 12. Restore the 12. happening, maybe divisions, maybe the 12 apostles going in their separate ways. Peter's job is to restore, to bring unity, so that the message and the teaching and preaching of Jesus can continue to reach new worlds. Peter is the agent of restoration, and according to scriptural evidence, Peter plays a central role in the years following Jesus' death. On the day of Pentecost, it's Peter who stands up and addresses the crowd and leads this first great ingathering of souls, 3,000 we are told. And it was Peter who first pleaded effectively for Gentiles to be added and admitted to the church. Peter and Paul wrestle that all the time, and we often think Paul is the great apostle to the Gentiles. Peter is the one who goes to the home of Cornelius and declares food acceptable, and that God is large enough to include both Jews and Gentiles into the one great body. So to close with, in today's gospel reading, Jesus encountered some fishermen on the Sea of Galilee who had a difficult night fishing. And Jesus invites Peter to put his nets in for a big catch of fish. What this is an invitation to venture into new and holy ground. This is a story that permits the church and to admit the workers in the church to embrace new challenges, new mission, and new ministry in every generation of its life. Church, we are urged to respond to the urging of God's breaking into our lives, every human life. And so, let us be so bold as the Apostle Peter, who obeys the instructions of Jesus and is surprised by a catch that is so huge that assistance was needed to haul it in. The call of God is the work of transforming lives. It's as simple as that. That's why we are here. We are here to transform lives, to transform communities, so that humanity can transcend its brokenness and find unity and restoration and wholeness. No one says it better than our General Minister and President, Sharon Watkins. We are a movement for wholeness in a fragmented world. Peter is a testament to how lives can be transformed, one life at a time. We invite you to stand and sing a hymn, which is an invitation for all of those who desire to be a part of a community that seeks wholeness in a world that is fragmented and broken.